Wow, Lubie, I'm happy that you took this into consideration because I was thinking you would be the hardest guy to move off of this mark. We discussed this briefly yesterday. I'm looking at my alarm clock every morning and thinking, why is this set for 5:30? This is the age of streaming. We're just clinging to an old concept here about morning drive radio that is no longer relevant. People don't even go to work anymore. Now, that was one of the few, if you can take positives away from the COVID-19 period of time, that was one thing, this change, transformation, where there wasn't so much pressure on you to get up in the morning, go flying out of the house, get immersed into just hideous traffic, get all nerved out about driving to work, and by the time you get there, you're a schwitzing, psychotic mess. And then right away, the boss starts screaming at you about something you didn't finish up correctly yesterday, and you just have a miserable day. Here you have a cup of coffee, you pet the dog, maybe even take it for a walk, like you were doing, and you say, wow, life is good.
The time!
Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Peel yourself off the mat Monday. Glad you guys could peel yourself off the mat and join us here on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubie Lubitz, after just I mean, you could not ask for more activity over a sporting weekend than we got. It's that time of the year, Lubie. It's that time of the year when everything's going. I have preseason prognostications going and analysis for basketball. Hockey's already in preseason games. Football now, after 4 weeks, so we should be able to see a few things that are a little bit more decisive than they were, say, going into the season in week number 1 in the NFL. And college football taking shape a little bit, although the heavyweights have been dodging people so far throughout the early portion of the season. Not uncommon, but usually you have a few more marquee matchups than we've had in the early stages of the college football season. A few good games and a few games that would give you an indication as to who's really good or not. But for the most part, and it's funny because I have a board up here, a little grease board that I use, put a couple of things up just because the memory is shot. And it happens to be from the ill-fated Friday License to Steal show that I had a couple of notes. I was getting ready to go, and we weren't able to pull it off from a technical aspect for about the 4th time out of 5. And I'm looking at it going, I mean, the college heavyweights so far, they've kind of been like picking their opponents out of the same German graveyard as Canelo Alvarez, who also had another one of those fights over the weekend that made you think that he is the modern-day Money Mayweather. He's just taking on opportunities to make big paydays, even though there is literally 0.0 in terms of challenge, while building this legacy. And that's kind of what the heavyweights in college football have been doing so far. So we're waiting to see something definitive, something decisive happen there. Something you had the Ryder Cup early in the morning. That was going at like 1 a.m., which can the captain be responsible for the loss of the team? The U.S. team got smoked. Everybody's blaming Zach Johnson. I saw something. You talk about an analysis of minutia. One of the golf writers who I have respect for, Mark Cannizzaro in the New York Post, good golf writer, right?
We've talked
and I mean, he got really into it, and he was saying that it even boiled down to the kind of pictures that they had in the hotel room for the two teams. So he says, well, they had some nondescript stuff in the American hotel, golf shots that, were kind of beauty shots or whatever. And I'm thinking, well, so what did they have in the European room? Naked women? But it was shots of them in big moments in their career. And he said that even had something to do with it. I don't know about that. Because if you really look at it, when John Rahm, he chipped in from the Vatican, literally, just like way off the green, went all the way around the ruins of Pompeii and all through Milan, Florence, down the streets of Rome, and then right into the cup. What are you going to do about that? You're going to lose. That's about all there is to it. Literally, chipped in from the Vatican, this guy. It was amazing. So I don't know. I mean, Zach Johnson might not have been the most inspiring leader. It's possible he's kind of a quiet, low-key guy, always was throughout his career. But I think maybe you just ought to look out there on the course and say, Jesus Christ, these guys can't miss. So that was going on. We dropped the Ryder Cup. We were kind of out of it right from the very beginning as the Europeans won the first 4 matches on the first day and then won by a margin of 5 points to get the cup back after the Americans had taken it away a couple of years ago. Buck Showalter getting fired. That was the Mets' big season. The guy wins 100 games one year with a team that wasn't supposed to be as good as this year's team. Gets nothing but bad breaks this year, and he's one of those guys with seams on his head that is a baseball man. Is it true? Has Buck Showalter never made it to a World Series? Thought I read that this morning. That seems almost impossible, right? He's managed some pretty good teams. He's managed some lousy teams, but in general, by most baseball authorities, is considered to be one of the great baseball men that ever existed. I'm talking about Buck Showalter here for a second. Libby gets canned by the Mets. That's a tough go, huh?
I mean,
they brought in a new guy to run the show, so it was likely that he was going to want to bring in his own manager. Craig Counsell is the guy that's often talked about because this guy Stearns came from the Brewers. So a lot of developments away from the gridiron, and then of course, reality check. Just when you think you got everything going your way, right? Miami Dolphins 3-0. Went on the road, beat the Chargers. Went on the road, beat what looks to be a pretty inept Patriots team. My God. You know what, Lubie? I got to give you one. I'm beginning to agree with you about Mac Jones. Just horrific. Wow.
About time.
Charlie Jones, the old announcer, could have done more with the Patriots yesterday against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they were getting smoked and badly outclassed, and the Cowboys had every incentive to go out there and put their best foot forward after getting beaten in a big surprise by Arizona the prior week, just when you thought the Cowboys were Super Bowl material, possibly. At least Jerry Jones was beating his chest and saying, yeah, we really got it together. Look at the late job I did. I put these players together. And the next thing you know, they're losing to Arizona, a team that we thought was tanking deliberately to get Caleb Williams, which wouldn't be a bad idea, would it? This guy, Caleb Williams,
no, he's legit.
Man, this guy has some flash. I would think that he is as likely to make it as a pro quarterback as Andrew Luck was, although in a different type of fashion. Yeah. Luck was prototypical professional quarterback at the time, the kind of quarterback that really, that was the only kind of style quarterbacks had when Andrew Luck came into the league. And then you started to get the branch out there with the Lamar Jacksons and some of the other guys, Deshaun Watson, who were running around and throwing and weren't primarily throwers, passers, but were able to do that well enough so that their running game became an even bigger threat. And that came into vogue. And this Caleb Williams is all of that. So we shall see. Throws the ball better than most, and a dynamic runner, seems to really have it under control, although a scare there at the end, huh? Colorado covered the point spread when it looked like they were about to get blown out. And they come back and only lose by a touchdown. USC, though, already had like 50 points in the bank when they went 48-41.
Yep.
I think was the final. Dropped in the polls as a result of that. But their defense, as we said last week, and I have a note on the board here just to mention that their defense is as suspect as an O.J. Simpson alibi. I love that one, man. Where were you, Juice? What kind of excuses was this guy making? Was he really? He wasn't at the Buffalo Bills game yesterday, was he? O.J. Simpson? Was he tailgating? Somebody must have photoshopped a picture there of O.J. in a big lounge chair getting ready for the Miami Dolphins game. Nonetheless, the Dolphins got spanked. It looked like it was going to be a great ball game at the very beginning. The Bills go right down the field, chop them up. I was calling for the head of Vic Fangio already, thinking that maybe it's time we can move on from this defensive coordinator. I know it's premature evaluation, Lubie, but and he had done a nice job after giving up 239 yards in week number 1 on the rush. Came back against the Patriots and shut them down a little bit, but I think that's an easier task than most people imagined in week number 2. And then comes back and they win their third ball game by putting up 70. So there wasn't much on the defense there because the Dolphins essentially just wrapped it up by scoring every time they had the ball. And then it came yesterday, and it was ugly. They were getting shredded defensively. And, of course, weren't able to sustain the offense at that level. Had a couple of turnovers. They have 3 turnovers, 2 Mostert fumbles, and then I think an interception by Tua.
Interception, yeah.
As an overthrow. I mean, what wasn't the
It was
worst
in
play I've
bracketed
seen?
coverage, and he hasn't been rushed at all. So he was getting rushed a lot yesterday.
Yeah.
And he went back to the guy we saw last year. He was very anxious. He wasn't confident in his throws. He was making bad decisions, and then his throw. He was wildly inaccurate a lot of the time, which is, as we know, not his game. Yeah, it was fun trying to watch that game. It was a lot of fun.
Started out great. I mean, when it was 14-14, you thought, my God, I don't want to leave my seat here. And then they both teams, I guess, the Bills got the first stop on the Dolphins and then scored. So they're up by a touchdown and just ran away from there. And let's get more deeply into it because we want to get to the Pigskin Playbook. And we have standing by one of our favorites. Joins us every Monday, brought to you by Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, mile marker 104, the Overseas Highway in Key Largo. You've gotten professional lighting here today, John Congemi. We look pale in comparison. Hey, pale face. I mean, I don't mean to make references to Native Americans, but you look great, my friend. How are you?
Tommy Fox sent me a tanning light, so I get sun while I'm doing the show. It's perfect. No, everything's going well, guys. It was a crazy game up at Orchard Park yesterday.
Yeah,
and it was one of those things where the Buffalo Bills are still the king of the AFC East.
Yeah.
And they kind of went out there and played it under the radar for most of the week, praising the Dolphins and how good they were in scoring 70 points on a bad Denver defense. And for the most part of the first half, I thought it was an entertaining football game. It was, as you said, Defo, back and forth, and the Bills get the first stop. You get kind of a so-so pass interference call on Kohu covering Diggs, and it leads to an 11-yard touchdown. So now Buffalo's up 7 points, and then you go 4 straight possessions on offense for the Dolphins where they don't do anything. And that seemed like it was a little bit of a separation in the game. You couple that with an injury to Armstead, but you answer, the first drive of the second half, the Dolphins go right down the field, score, not sure why they go for 2, kick the extra point, you're down 10, you feel like you've got momentum.
What was the logic there? I mean, what
analytics
doesn't make sense.
Analytics. I didn't take it in high school. I didn't take it in college. I probably wouldn't have signed up for it.
You find it surprising. I took odds and probability as my.
But as a player, guys, you get deflated when you hear the thud of a mixed extra point or a missed or a block punt. You get the same deflation when you go for 2 when you don't need to and you miss because you're now we're chasing again.
Yeah.
Instead of all right, we're okay. We're okay. We're a 2-score game, touchdown on a field goal, however it comes. We can extend this game on the road in a hostile environment. You don't need to chase. You're a good team. That was my thought anyway. So after the rant, the Dolphins go on. They come out in the second half. They cut the lead to 31-20, and then the Bills answer with a field goal, and you get the 2 interception, and all of a sudden it's the other way. It's going to be bad because the defense can't get to Josh Allen. It allows the skill guys for Buffalo to run around a little bit longer, and it's tougher for the secondary to stay plastered on those guys for that long. And it becomes a mini rout in the second half for the Miami Dolphins.
It's funny, too, because, I mean, you think back to the so-called narrative before the season started, before opening day. People were talking about the Buffalo Bills. Maybe the window of opportunity is starting to narrow a little bit, that if they don't do it now in a year where they could be fading a little bit, then it's going to be a long time coming again. They look like garbage in the first week of the season, losing to the New York Jets after the Rodgers injury. I mean, that was just a hapless effort by Josh Allen. He looked bozoic there. And now the next 3 weeks, they look every bit like the team that you have to beat in the AFC East. The Dolphins were right there toe-to-toe with them in that category. I don't know that you can be overwhelmingly upset that they lost this game. Like you were talking about last week on the show, John, you were thinking, hey, 2-2 wouldn't be that bad. 3-1 is certainly all right with your lone loss being a road game to Buffalo. You've played 3 of these 4 games on the road. I'm with you. I thought, you know what? With that offense, they're not out of it. But no, they weren't able to really get it going after that opening drive of the second half. And I'm not sure, that killed them. I mean, when you look at a 28-point loss, the difference between making the extra point and the 2-point conversion try seems, marginal at best. But for the life of me, I mean, the more I thought about that, I was like, why on earth would Mike McDaniel have gone for 2 points there? Just to be down 9, is that much better than being down 10 in an NFL game? I mean,
Well,
I guess if you score 10 points, it puts you in a position to win, but it also puts you in a shot with a shot to lose. If you fail there, and they did.
it's almost like you don't want to give the Buffalo Bills and that crowd any reason to cheer. And you kick the extra point, you're down 10. You're just trying to play to extend the game on the road.
Sure.
Give yourself a chance. Now at home, maybe it flips on the other way because you're going to be more aggressive. You're going to be able to have the crowd on your side. You're going to feed off of that energy. But the Buffalo Bills seemed like they were comfortable playing, that NASCAR type of start, or they were comfortable continuing to do what they were going to do and play, tougher or stingier on defense, kind of crank it up on Tua and that offensive line that was beat up. Connor Williams doesn't start for the Dolphins at center, so you have Liam Eichenberg in there, and it's a tough assignment going on the road in a hostile environment with that crowd noise. And you could tell by listening to Tua after the game, Coach McDaniel after the game, I think this is just my intuition. There was a lot of guys during the week that played skilled positions for the Dolphins on offense that weren't paying attention to some of the nuances of what was being put into the offense during the week in terms of where to line up, where to motion, where to go. And it led to a lot of pre-snap confusion for Tua directing guys where to line up. And now you look at the play clock and it's 6, 5, 4. There's more pressure on the quarterback. There's more pressure on the center to identify, get the snap off, communication. There were a lot of things during that game that led to maybe Tua feeling out of sync. And I think it was a lot of stuff happening around him playing traffic cop that he hasn't had to do for over the first 3 weeks of the season.
Well, and to me, look, I still am a McDaniel fan. I like the guy. I love this offense. I think the defense can get there, but I do have questions to you about that. But it feels like all the gains he made the first few weeks, it feels like he took a major backslide yesterday. It's not the losing. Look, going into the game, as positive people were, I kept saying, look, like going into this season, you're on the road at the Chargers, you're on the road at the Patriots, you're on the road at Buffalo, and then the Broncos were, remember, going into the year, the Broncos are supposed to be better. They got Sean Payton.
Yeah.
2-2 would be cool. 3-1 would be great. I'm not even imagining 4-0. But here's the deal. Buffalo is that team that's had their number, right? And you played them close last year. You can't, to go up to Buffalo and look like that in that second half scared the crap out of me, because McDaniel looked like people joke about him, look like an Apple guy. He looked like a guy that had the bully taking his lunch money, and he didn't have any. Instead of standing up to him, he cowered in the corner. Like, his play calling was so freaking weird in short yardage situations. I don't know. Look, you explained Jordan Travis to me, so maybe you have an answer. When you don't have Connor Williams and then you don't have Teron Armstead that go 5 wide on 3rd and 1, I don't get what you're doing. Tua's not going to get time to get it to the fucking guys going down the field. And he did it 4 times in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 2nd and 1. He went 5 wide, and I'm like, I don't know enough football to know why this is smart, because to me it seemed dumb. The run was working. They were getting 2 and 3 yards a carry. A-Shane looked good. It's like it felt like last year when he would go away from the run and everyone would be like, what the hell are you doing? And the game was close. Like, they were within striking distance to maybe slow down the Bills, because we know Josh Allen has the propensity to make a mistake, but you got to keep the pressure on them. I don't know. When you're watching, you tell me what I was missing, because his short yardage play calling, I lost it the entire. Even when it was a blowout, I was still like, just do something, and he kept making weird calls time and time again to me.
Yeah, it almost felt like Sean McDermott took a page out of Bill Belichick's defense in New England. The way they kind of played cover 2, where they always had 2 safeties deep, and they played a little bit softer that way to not allow the explosives over the top. But then when it was short yardage, or it was a 3rd and very manageable for the Dolphins, they kind of cranked up the pressure, but they also didn't allow, they changed up free releases for Tua and Waddle. So they always didn't have a free release off the line of scrimmage, which made the timing of going to those guys maybe a little bit off kilter compared to the ease they did it with the first couple of weeks when they were getting to the ball to those guys. I thought early the Dolphins had answers because they went other places. They found Braxton Berrios. They found Durham Smythe. They were able to check the football down. They were able to get the football to other guys in those situations. And I thought Tua did a good job of that. But you're right, Lubie. I'm not quite sure what they were trying to get accomplished on 3rd and short, what they couldn't have done on the ground, especially Achane was he was hitting the line of scrimmage with a full head of steam. And it seemed like he was finding those creases again. And Mostert had a rough day, so keep him on the sidelines next to coach for that particular, situation in 3rd and short. Put your rookie out there that's feeling it, for 2 weeks in a row. He had 200 yards on the ground last week, over 100 again this week. So he's got to be doing something right. Feed him the football. There's other ways to slay the cat, right, in those situations. And I give credit to Buffalo. They changed it up a lot, and they won the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football because early in that game, it wasn't all Allen to Diggs. Buffalo was running the football between the tackles, and it was giving them just enough to keep Miami off balance on defense where they had to kind of like sit back and catch guys instead of attacking the line of scrimmage.
Allen looked great in the game. I mean, as bad as he was in week number 1, he's been terrific the last 3 weeks. So maybe it was a premature evaluation that he was a shot fighter. Bounced back nicely. And you would have to say then after 4 weeks, I know this was the home field advantage for Buffalo. It's a real tough place to play. And what's up with the people there? Are they just bitter about the endless winter? A friend of mine was on the team bus, the great Stephen J. Gray, who does the I know you know Steve, and he's quite the gentleman and a character. And he said he has never seen so many middle fingers as when the team bus was pulling out of the parking lot. And there are legendary stories about, eggs being thrown, all kinds of stuff happening there, but just a miserable bunch of people there in Buffalo. But it does seem like at least through the first 4 weeks, if you were going to go ahead and go to the scorecards, you would have to give a slight edge to Buffalo as being, and now they do have the heads up victory over the Miami Dolphins. There was a lot riding on this ball game. The Dolphins were in a position to kind of steal your lunch. Where
it's funny, guys, because I had the Dolphins at 2-2 after 4 weeks. Preseason, looking at the games, didn't think they'd win on the road against the Chargers. Felt like they wouldn't win on the road against Buffalo, but they would handle New England and Denver at home. I still feel like the Dolphins are in a good spot. I think they're in a really good spot because you have the Giants coming to town, and then they follow that up with the Panthers. That's a good way to get healthy. And it cures a lot of things in all 3 phases of your game, because rolling it out, putting both helmets on the field, the Dolphins got to be, I would think they have to be almost double-digit favorites, if not 7, 8, 9 points against both of those teams at home. And then it gets a little, the road gets a little bit rockier for the Dolphins because I know they have Philadelphia on the road, and they also have Kansas City and Germany on the horizon. So it gets a little bit bumpier, but that's a way to get healthy. Now you're 4-2, you're right back on schedule. And the Buffalo Bills, I think they have Philadelphia coming up. They have another division game coming up. They have Kansas City coming up. They play the same teams, and I'm not sure where the Marshmallows are lumped in there for their schedule, but it gets tougher where the Dolphins can get back that confidence they had over the first couple of weeks, and then they can get ready to go on the road and face Philadelphia and go to Germany and face the Kansas City Chiefs.
Philly and Kansas City, you would have to say have to be considered among the top 5, if not among the top 3 teams with San Francisco playing right now. I think you might be able to throw Buffalo in there and maybe even Miami in the top 5.
That's my top 5.
Yet Philadelphia and Kansas City. I mean, Kansas City's up 17-0, rolling over the Jets last night, and they did wonders for the career of Zach Wilson, who you think was maybe centimeters away from the bench
It's like the
there, and they're going to take a shot with Trevor Siemian, who he still had the playbook in his pocket, not even one of those little things on his wristband. He had the whole playbook in there, and then he catches fire. They lose the game ultimately because and this happens, John, and you can relate to this as much as anybody, having played quarterback at a variety of high levels, but. Sometimes you look for a quarterback and you always think of a guy with the game-winning drive or whatever, but it's a guy who, you get some momentum like Wilson did that's able to sustain it at least to the point where you continue to have the offensive advantage, if that makes sense. I sound like Chris Collinsworth or one of these guys, just giving you like a broad, vague statement that means nothing, but you can't go 3 and out then after you tie the game at 20 or whatever, or make a couple of bad passes. And he just kind of wasn't able to get him over the hump. Maybe that's because they don't have personnel that matches up with Kansas City. Certainly Kansas City is a great team. You would have to, consider them to, as we said, to be one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl this year. But it just didn't seem like he was able to push it over the top. And Tua looked, to me, in this season, like he was getting there, but even he kind of faded and came back to the pack in the second half after that opening drive yesterday.
Well, that's what pressure does in the pocket, guys.
Yeah,
I mean, when you, as a defense, when you can affect timing and you can affect the quarterback in the pocket where he just doesn't feel comfortable, the results are you're going to get inaccurate throws, you're going to get rush throws, you're going to get indecision. And that all adds to defensive pressure. It turns it up in the pocket, and it gets guys closer in coverage because the ball's not coming out on time. I mean, take example, I didn't watch the entire Kansas City game, but the Dolphin game. When Tua threw the corner route to Braxton Berrios, the ball was in the air before Berrios was almost out of his cut to the corner to the back pylon of the end zone. He had perfect timing. The pocket was pristine. He was able to get back, set his foot, throw the football with anticipation. Zach Wilson, when he was getting hot last night, you saw more anticipation in his throws. What else did you see? Pocket was clean. Guys were out of the route. Separation was there. He had confidence that he could deliver the football. When quarterbacks get pressure, the great ones or the really good ones can still deliver somehow, some way by changing their arm angle, by moving slightly in the pocket, by putting the football where only your guy can get it or it's an incompletion. And the guys that struggle with that don't see it clear enough or don't have enough confidence to let it rip. And they're off by a foot. And that makes it either incomplete, tip pass, interception, or you're punting the football. So everybody wants to say that guy's great, that guy sucks, but in reality, it's very close in terms of being successful and not being successful, and being a king or being the hero or being the GOAT, because it's a fine line.
Well, look, Mahomes is the gold standard, right? No one disagrees with that anymore. With Rodgers and Brady falling off, Mahomes was horrendous yesterday. Like Mahomes, it looked like the Super Bowl was the last time Mahomes was getting hit like that. Even when he had time, his passes sucked. Like he looked like garbage. He had 2 interceptions in 1 quarter. And again, we know the Jets.
A couple of drops too.
Because the Jets are so good up front, their defense, and they're so good in coverage. Sometimes there's nowhere to go with the football, and all of a sudden the pressure's on. The ball's supposed to be gone, right? The ball's the linemen are going, what are we still doing here? What's our guy doing? And there's nowhere to go with the football because the pressure plus the coverage is advantage Jets, and they're good on that side of the football.
Man, he was shredding them early in the game. You thought this was going to be another 70 spot.
Well, it was 17-0, bang, and all of a sudden it turned around.
Yeah. Friend of mine, our good friend of ours, we reference him here because we live vicariously through him. Big fan of the show. Big fan of yours, by the way. The great Sheldon G. Used to see him all the time at Gulfstream Park. Now lives in Las Vegas and sends in these bets that you have to think either he made a score that we didn't know about or some serious inheritance money. I mean, he's betting like $20,000, $30,000 a game. And I think he laid 22 dimes on the Jets, getting 9 points last night at the South Point Casino. He posted this ticket on Facebook. And naturally, my heart was a flutter. And I'm thinking, I love this guy. 17-0. You were like, God, this is an annihilation. And we got Zach Wilson to try to rally us from the grave. It's just not going to happen. So good to see that he was able to score there. And I'm sure they were a little upset there in the sports book because you thought getting 8.5 with the Jets was not nearly enough after watching that first quarter of the game. We've also seen, John, we know this to be true. I mean, it is, you talk about day to day, it's literally in some cases week to week in the NFL. I mean, look at Dallas. They lay an egg against Arizona, come out and shellac the Patriots, who were coming off their first win. And you thought, well, maybe Belichick, even though seems to be challenged in terms of the roster he has compared to other teams, figures out a way to make something happen. They get annihilated. So very possible, that the Finns can shrug this thing off in Buffalo and bounce back. The Giants, that's a big ticket, huh? Do you have any tickets for that game, John?
No, you know what, Defo?
I can get you all kinds of money for them.
A lot of people have been asking me, hey, I don't get any tickets. They don't give me any tickets. So yeah, I'm sure every year when the Giants come down, and it's not often, but when they do play in South Florida, man, there is so much blue on that visiting sideline, and Dolphin season ticket members are just kind of like hotcakes. What do you want? Set your price, and they get them. They sell those tickets.
Yeah, it's going to be monstrous. I've told this story before, and it often comes up in reference to the conversation about whether or not we have just shitty sports fans here in South Florida. I mean, even looking at the Marlins, which we didn't mention at the top, as we got into it.
That's awesome.
They make the playoffs. And, my buddy who was watching the Marlins and the Mets series here towards the end of the season, I guess it was the last home series, what was saying, and they were alluding to this on the broadcast, that how pathetic is the support here in South Florida. You got a playoff team that's coming out of nowhere, writing another South Florida Cinderella story, and there's like 8,000 people at key ball games as they're, in the spotlight and under the scrutiny of trying to make it into the postseason, which they did, and they did it in really exciting ways, even rallying from that 3-0 deficit against. Were you a Pittsburgh Pirates fan? No, you had no affiliation to Pittsburgh until you went there to school.
Actually, I was a Cincinnati Reds fan growing up. Yeah.
All right. So, but that was great stuff, gets no attention from the fans here. And the reason I bring this up is I'll never forget, I was doing the on-field announcements at a Dolphins-Giants game years ago, obviously like 30 years ago. And, I used to have to go, what it's like down there in the bowels of the stadium. And if you had to make your way up to either the press box, which I always tried to find a couple of open seats in the club seating area so I could soak up some air conditioning. Plus, I like to yell and scream during the game. And often I would think that, the people in the press box might.
There'll be no cheering in the press box, please. Yeah. No cheering.
Yeah, it's not even cheering. It's like, fuck you, Marino! A pig. I like to get into the game, and have some fun when I'm there. So I'm making my way from all the way down there. You walk onto the field and you walk through that tunnel, and it was the opposite side of where the players come out. And then by the time I made my way up to the seats, I'm sort of, outside away from the ability to see the field, and the place starts rocking. It's in the first few minutes of the game. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, man, the Dolphins must have scored. And I come out, and I look on the scoreboard, and I see a big fat 0 there, big fat round number. And it was the Giants who scored.
It's unbelievable.
You could have sworn that you were at MetLife. I mean,
right.
I couldn't believe the overwhelming number of people. And it's true, whenever we see New York teams here.
Is it go in New York, and I think I've got this right, if you're primarily a Giants fan, you're a Rangers fan? And if you're an Islanders fan, you're primarily a Jets fan. Is that kind of
it's Mets, Jets, Giants, Yankees.
Mets, Jets. Okay.
Yeah, Mets, Jets, Giants, Yankees. I'm not sure the hockey figures in too heavily. Yeah, because there are no Islander fans, I don't think.
Hey,
ever since Mike Bossy retired, they don't have a single fan.
How about all AFC East teams other than New England? How much did they enjoy watching Bill Belichick on the sidelines yesterday?
Oh my God!
He must be beside himself because he casually walks over to Mac Jones with that face like, "Hey, you stink. You're not going back in. I'm bringing the other guy in." And he didn't say that, but that's what it looked like on TV. He barely gave him, the respect of saying, "Listen, we're going to go with, the backup. You're out of the game."
Yeah, he was horrible too. I mean, he really was bad. Did you see the post game press conference? I saw the highlights of. I love Belichick press conferences.
I missed it.
Naturally that question came up, and he mumbled like 2 words, basically "fuck you" to the reporter, and then the guy persisted, and then sort of re-asked the question about did you take Mac Jones out of the game because he sucked, and he was trying to imply that he took him out because the game was essentially over.
Yeah,
and there was no point playing him anymore. Which as you alluded to, John, I mean, it looked like he went over to Mac Jones and said, "You suck."
Yeah, basically. I've seen enough of you today. Go.
He's morphing into Captain Queeg. I don't know if you remember the Kane Mutiny, but he's going to be rolling little metal balls pretty soon and asking if he can have his strawberries. You know what? I don't mind seeing him struggle. I still think. Why do I believe that he's crafty enough to somehow? I thought they might give the Cowboys a little bit of a game. I wouldn't have bet on them. I ended up getting stuck with them as my buddy handed me the worst teams in the history of wagering to book his bets on, and I think I went 2-4. But he, that the Patriots was one of the teams I had getting 6.5. I mean, think about that. You needed like 60 to feel comfortable.
You needed 3 touchdowns for sure. And you know what? I'm not quite sure. I had this conversation with friends of mine. When does the heat get turned up on Bill Belichick? Say they go win 5 games this year.
Yeah.
Okay. And they don't have a quarterback that they feel, that confident about. They don't have a lot of skill guys that they feel that confident about. He's basically the head coach / GM of the team, right? So he needs X amount of wins to catch Don Shula. When does Robert Kraft, does he just say, okay, we're going to be terrible for the next 3 years so you can get, 19 wins or however many wins he needs to get this record? Or does the heat from the fans turn up if they win 5? I'm being generous.
Isn't that like turning on a Red Auerbach, though? I mean,
that's what I mean. Like, does it even
Bowden,
affect? Does it even come into play?
I think he at least gets a year or 2 more. I mean, he's 70. I thought he was older. He's early 70s, so he could coach to mid 70s. I think they give him another couple years to see if he can draft it because they're going to suck. So maybe they can draft this quarterback class should be fucking ridiculous. So maybe he can draft another one and then they'll give him 2 years.
But Lubie, I agree with that. But who do they throw? They got Devontae Parker's their main guy.
Sucks.
And he's a hamstring away from going, I'm out for a month,
Yeah.
I feel the pain in my leg as you mention it.
What's the score? Oh man, I don't know.
That's a great sporting question, though. This is one for the professor of these sort of hypotheticals, the great Jim Sarney, who's tuned in and is also a huge John Congemi fan. And that is, I mean, how much of a courtesy do you give a guy who's been great for you?
Right.
And look, I mean, this was a question with Shula for years. I had to take these sports talk calls forever. It seemed like, and there was the phrase was as the game passed them by. It started with Chuck Noll, and they were applying it to other older coaches.
Landry, yep.
And then when it hit Shula, and I remember this distinctly. I can picture exactly how it went down. I used to help my friend out. We were doing some string and gathering sound for ESPN. And so, we had our own camera and stuff, little video company. So I was to pose the questions that ESPN had sent down that they wanted answered. And of course, the first one on the list. Now we were at St. Thomas, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the high school, but the old
facility. I know exactly, okay. Yeah.
Outside Schwitzen, it's 1,000 degrees, and we had to set up a thing with 2 chairs and some lights and all kinds of crap. You know how this goes where, you're waiting around and you're a little anxious thinking, I just want to get this done, and it's taken forever. And then Shula comes out, and I have the list of questions, and the first one on there is, Don, do you think the game has passed you by?
Wow.
Now, how do you handle that? You need the money from. I wasn't going to be on ESPN asking this question, so it wasn't like I was going to suddenly be thrust into a Jim Gray capacity. But off camera, I was going to have to ask Don Shula if he thought the game was passing him by. And so, and I had a good relationship with Shula, as many people did. He was very gracious for the most part with the press, especially. If you thought highly of him and expressed that. So, he got along fine with me. And I said, I prefaced it by saying, Don, these aren't my questions.
That's
Looks
smart.
kind of stupid, I mean, in a way, but
I'm just here to ask you the questions that somebody else wrote for me.
But I mean, it was ridiculous to even pose this question to the man. I mean, it would be like asking Belichick, well, why don't we do this, John? I mean, when the Patriots come here, I have to get a credential, and I'll go Al Lombardo.
Get a couple of folding chairs, put them down with a one light, and say,
right
hey,
at the
we're
press
here.
conference, I shoved Bo Camper out of the way. He usually asks that first question like he was Helen Thomas. And I say, Bill, do you think the game has passed you by?
Passed you by. That would be wonderful.
What do you think happens there? I don't know. But I mean, it's one of those things where how does a guy for 20 years of greatness deserve the consideration of going out on whatever his own terms are? They look, Buck Showalter was pretty well liked by, it seemed like, the Met players, and they still cut him. Yesterday, they cut him loose. I mean, and he's one of those venerable old baseball guys. I mean, is it that Belichick can't coach anymore? What do you think? I mean,
well,
it just seems like you said, the personnel side is more deflating than the play on the field.
Well, without Tom Brady for his career, he has a losing record as a head coach.
True. Yeah, I mean, people quick to point that out, including Chip Namius, who hates him like poison.
Which, and I think he's obviously a great football mind, but I don't know if the game's passed him by. I just don't know if they're a good team.
You look at horrible, it seems. Yeah.
You look at their personnel against any other personnel in the AFC East. I mean, in my opinion, the Jets probably have the best personnel defensively, and Buffalo's right there. And then you have the Dolphins in New England, and whichever, offensively, they probably have, on par with the Jets, what they're looking at in terms of quarterback, but they have far worse skill players than the Jets. I mean, at wide receiver, the Jets are loaded.
Very nondescript.
And at running back, they've got three guys that can come in and play at any time. And you feel like you've got your best guy on the field at that position. Or New England, you're probably not sure. So there's a lot of holes in New England's football team. And that goes back to personnel, which he's partly responsible for.
Seems like every team has somebody that you want to watch. I don't know that there's anybody there on that New England team that you say, wow, I don't want to miss this game because, I won't be able to see so-and-so play. I would, the criticism, I guess, probably should center more on the team that Belichick assembled than whether or not he's capable of coaching.
Right.
Which, is just as much, if not more, of a scathing indictment. Since he's doing both, right? The old Parcells thing. If you're going to have me cook the meal, let me pick the groceries. And so far, he's picked a bunch of duds, which is bad. And I have to change my opinion about Mac Jones, especially after yesterday. I've been telling Lubie I didn't think this guy was that bad, but he was every bit that bad yesterday, and it's showing signs that that's more the norm than the exception. What
a mismatch though up front. Dallas it looked like they were running right past the offensive line on most of the plays, and in the backfield to stop the run before they were even ready to do anything. So, that Dallas team, I can't believe they went on the road and lost to Arizona the way they did. It had to be just one of those weeks where, guys weren't showing up and guys didn't come ready to play mentally and physically, because yesterday it looked like a complete mismatch.
Well, Arizona and Houston are two teams that have been somewhat of a surprise so far. And C.J. Stroud, who, there was the big question about which of these quarterbacks drafted in the top four was actually going to turn out to be the best pro. And so far, that's clear cut. C.J. Stroud, after getting off to a rough start, might have been under wraps a little bit, might have needed to be under wraps, but starting to really show that maybe he does have that kind of pro potential that was worthy of where he was selected in the draft.
Yeah, I like the way he played. I loved him as a college player, and you love the confidence. I like listening to guys when they're talking, during the week or post game. Boy, he gives you confidence. If you're in that huddle, that he's the guy. That he's the leader of that football team. And it's not only on offense, he wants to, be the face of the Houston Texans. And that's something that, you feel good about when you're a GM, or you feel good about if you're a head coach or the offensive coordinator of that team. You go, man, we got a guy that no matter what, he's going to lead us. He's going to be there, and he's not only going to be there this year. He's young enough; he can be here for a lot of years. So we just got to build around him, and it shows in the way they've played. They've put points on the board. They've been in football games, and they're going to be a team to be reckoned with because of a guy like that. You want to elevate your play to match his.
You, John, and we'll get into some college football with John Congemi here on the Pigskin Playbook in just a few moments. But you're, spending more time in the Keys than Lubie and I have. We haven't been down there in years, and since the last time we were at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, is there a big like there is everywhere else? I mean, as we were saying, those Giant tickets, you could get thousands for them. Even though the Giants haven't been very good, they play tonight against Seattle as 1.5 point underdogs. I think they're at home also for this game, and big question marks about Daniel Jones and whether or not he was worth this $160 million. He certainly has been the antithesis of that. But I mean, are there big Giant fans down there in the Keys? Because I would think the Chill would be the place to be tonight for this Seattle Giants game.
Yeah, I would think so. The little amphitheater setting for Monday Night Football, and I'm sure that the sports bar will be packed down at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. You know what? It's a place to be, whatever flag you're flying, because you can get good food, you can get great service and first-class amenities, and just spectacular Bayside views at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. So I can't wait to go back down there. I was there about a month and a half ago, and can't wait to go back down there again because it's an easy ride from South Florida anywhere in Dade or Broward. Broward County, you're looking at an hour and 15, and in Dade County, you're there in under an hour. So it's right there in Key Largo. You can't miss it. Just when you get across that first bridge, you kind of peek to the right, and you see the big Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill sign, and you can go there and put your feet up, get a drink at the tiki bar, or you can go into the restaurant, or like I said, on a Monday night or Sunday, you can go into the sports bar, and I'm sure that it'll be moving in there for the Marlins game as well on Tuesday night when they face the Phillies up in Philadelphia.
I know Jimmy's friends with Belichick, but is bringing Mike Mayo down there going to be the equivalent of like having Belichick show up, to take a look at the menu? Because, he probably needs to loosen his tie and unbutton the top button on his collar going down there. And yet, I think you'd be amazed. I mean, the level of quality of the food, whether you're talking about something as simple as what would you consider to be, sports bar food, which is at a high end. All the way. I mean, you can be, eating, grouper franchise there, and it comes out great. I mean, they have a wide range on the menu.
Yeah, it's great. Anywhere from, snacks, watching a game of your choice in terms of finger food to, as you said, you could get a prime steak, or you could get, the fresh catch of the day, which is just about everything that they have down there in the Key Largo area, down in the Bayside. And it's just a wonderful job. Larry and Dominic and Amanda do such a good job there with the hospitality and with the service and the quality of the food. And the drinks somehow just taste better when you're at Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill.
And they're not afraid to pay, I mean, they have a heavy-handed pour there, as I recall.
Yes.
It was great. It wasn't like one of those things where you thought you had just gotten a drink at a slot machine in Atlantic City from the traveling waitress. And you're like, what carton did this vodka come out of? Did you use a thimble or a shot glass? What was that? All right, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. That's mile marker 104. It is kind of like the ring walk of a heavyweight champion. You know how I always enjoy that, like the surge of people kind of moving towards the ring and everybody else is in place there. When Mayo comes in, and he's got the robe on and everything, and all we want to do is put in front of him an Italian fisherman pizza. And then everybody's waiting, like, and finally he gives it like Caesar, the thumbs up, and we're like, yeah, all right.
That's right.
We can party now. So that'll be a lot of fun. Lubie's working on those arrangements, John. Now, we've been working on them for the last 2 years. So we're hoping. Is Tommy Fox going to dodge us the rest of the year as we try to put this together? What do you think?
No, I think he's in. I think he's in. If there's drinking food, I think Tom's in.
All right. Well, we'll get down there soon. I'm looking forward to it. I think Lubie was anticipating maybe early October. So that's
sometime
right
hopefully in October when you get down there.
Awesome.
Going to be a lot of fun. All right, we'll come back. We'll talk some college football and more of a look around the National Football League. Look ahead to next week with John Congemi. John Congemi's Pigskin Playbook every Monday here, brought to you by Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill on the Defo Show. Back with more in a moment. Now that.
The time.
Oh, for Sonny, did I mention the WNBA championship is set, Louie? I'm all in on the Liberty. I bet them early in the season against the Aces. It's not looking good, my friend. It is 8:54.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
Johnson joins us here on the program, along with John Congemi and its Dateline Dolphins, of course, Leslie Visser, the lovely and talented one.
It was always different. You had to know if it was Emmitt Smith, if you screamed at him, he was going to go into a shell. I wasn't going to get anything out of him for the rest of the day. If it's Charles Haley, he was going to get upset at me and maybe threaten me on my life. And
mean it.
Yeah, and mean it. And he could have done it too, I promise. But when he went into my office, he said, Coach, just get on to me one-on-one. Don't do it in front of the other players. Now, Michael Irvin, I could cuss him like a sailor. And the more I cussed him, the harder he worked.
From South Florida to the entire world, thank you to the iHeartRadio app. Here is Defo, joined by Lubie on the Defo Show.
All right, welcome back to the show. John Congemi, the Pigskin Playbook. Later on, Brett Tessler, the Agent of the Stars, will go over some NFL things with us. I wanted to touch on college football a little bit and get your impressions about this past weekend. We were saying earlier in the show, John, that the heavyweights really haven't been overwhelmingly tested yet. Very much, the allusion we made was to Canelo Alvarez finding their opponents in German graveyards, and it seems like that's what the powers in college football have done so far. We did see, some interesting action, including, what do you make of Notre Dame, man? And what do you make of Freeman as a coach? He manages to escape somehow with what I thought was an extremely lucky win over Duke. But, and I watch him in these post-game interviews, and it seems like he's detached from the game. I want to like this guy, but what do you make of what happened there, Duke and Notre Dame, if you caught that game?
I think Duke's underrated. I think people still have the stigma of the name, and they don't associate it with football. But I think they've done a good job over the past, consistently. They've come from the graveyard of college football to being relatively relevant in terms of they know they're pretty good, and sometimes they're going to get and sneak up on teams and beat them. And now they've got a quarterback and they've got some skill guys that you put another jersey on and you go, that's not Duke. That's, South Carolina, or that's an SEC football team. That's not a bad ACC football team. They're well coached. They're disciplined. They have a difference maker at quarterback, and their skill guys are almost as good as yours. And and they're getting size on the both offensive and defensive lines. So for Notre Dame, I kind of felt like they were going to go in there and it was going to be a 28-3 type of game, and they had Notre Dame, just an inch of another loss, and they're coming off of such a disappointing loss at home against Ohio State, where they line up with 10 players for the last 2 plays of the game on defense. So. You question the coaching. I don't know if that's head coach, if that's defensive coordinator, if a combination of both, being detached, only having 10 guys out there for the previous game. and then coming out and getting 10 points and kind of going, okay, we can coast, the rest of the way, where Duke was playing for their lives. And I think this year's college football is really up for grabs. You thought Georgia was going to be the team. I mean, I watched Auburn play Cal, and I thought Auburn was terrible a couple of weeks ago. And all of a sudden, you get in front of 80,000, screaming fans, War Eagle, and they go bananas and they threaten Georgia. If it wasn't for the heroics of a tight end and quarterback, they lose that game. So they took advantage of turnovers. They took advantage of opportunities, and they found a way to win. And then you go out west, and Colorado's been the talk of college football, and they're down 41-14 or 41-20, and they come storming back. So, I know they're good on offense, but USC has to put up some kind of formidable defense to make it not a game. And then Caleb throws a ill-advised pass to keep Colorado in the game. So there's a lot of strange things happening in college football this year that hasn't happened in a while, and it'll be interesting to see. I think the number one team may start to fluctuate in terms of, you get Georgia on the ropes again like that. Maybe they take another step back, or do they use that as a wake-up call and show everybody that they're clearly the number one team in college football?
Seems like, just if you could see a general theme there, you lose 11 guys to the pros, many of whom went in the first round. You're going to take, you're going to take some kind of a hit. It's hard to find. When does that happen? I mean, it was the old days of UM, where, you had the entire team drafted, and then they still had people to replace them. But it's not easy to do, especially now. And, it seems like that they have, taken a hit that is significant enough to, have a team like Auburn give them a very threatening presence, throughout that ball game. Michigan hasn't played anybody of significance yet that you can make a judgment. Texas is up there, number 3.
I would say Texas.
I think Texas is the best team right now.
I think Texas is a really good football team, and I think that they have enough athletes and they have enough horsepower up front.
Yep.
And a quarterback that's really good, that they could pose problems for anybody. I don't care who they play. I think that they're that good.
All right. Watching Oregon, I was happened to be, you find it surprising, in a casino environment. A lot of people were watching games. I'm sure many were using out-of-state apps and offshore books to wager on these games. And somebody asked me if Oregon might not be the best team in the country, even though did they lose their opener? Oregon, they already have one loss, did they not?
You know what, Defo? I'd have to look to see. I saw them play one time this year, and that was against Colorado.
Yeah, they looked great there.
They looked phenomenal. I didn't know they were that good.
They're undefeated. I think they're undefeated.
I don't know if they've lost a game.
They couldn't be.
I don't remember.
They're undefeated. They're number 8. They're 5-0.
Okay,
yeah. So Oregon is the type of team. I think they have to, because of the experience of their quarterback. Yep. They're going to be in most games, and their speed of their tailbacks is unusual. They're small, but yet they're powerful. Yep. And I know they lost potentially one to a Lisfranc type of foot injury against Colorado. He went out of the game. Not sure if he was back this week or not, or had to stay out, for an extended period of time, because that's what they were rooming the injury was at the time. But if they have that 1-2 punch at running back, man, they were dynamic. And Nix does such a good job of extending plays with his legs that's an offense that can put up 35, 45 points a game, and they're tough to outscore.
Yeah, coach is crazy too, as we saw as he was firing up his team before the Colorado game. Like Butch Davis, who we found out was not only an excellent football coach and recruiter, but was the golf coach at one time at one of the places that he worked. You also serve as our golf correspondent. Any thoughts on that funeral march that was the U.S. Ryder Cup effort?
I think the Europeans embrace team golf better than the United States for some reason. I just think that when it comes to Sunday, the U.S. always has an advantage because they get back in their comfort zone of just being individualized and kind of in their own silos, and they play better. But yeah, gosh, hats off to Europe and the job they did. They got off to a fantastic start on a really unique golf course that was really rewarding your risk off the tee in terms of taking on, drivable par fours. And I thought the Europeans did an excellent job throughout from top to bottom, from 1 to 12. They did an outstanding job of coming to play, where the United States may have not benefited from most of their guys taking 4 or 5 weeks off before they played that, and they weren't ready to go when the gun sounded. And I was reading something this morning. It seemed like the U.S. did better in the middle of the golf course in terms of winning holes from like hole 4 to hole 14. But the Europeans got off to a great start, from holes 1 to 3, and they dominated from holes 15, 16 on. And that seemed to be the difference in some of those matches.
They needed you out there, Johnny.
I don't know. I couldn't have helped them.
Yeah.
I maybe motivate them in the room, maybe get them to talk to each other. It would have been a big, huge difference.
I used to think I set records by doing 4-hour post-game shows, but how many hours? You were still on after 60 minutes last night.
I think we're still on. They're still running over. Gosh, we were on quite a while. Yeah, but it seems like when you win, you have more to talk about.
So easy, yes.
Yeah, when you lose, you keep going over the same mistakes, and it's tough. But you know what? That's part of sports. You enjoy the highs, and you got to get past the lows. And the Dolphins are in that position now. They thought they were going to be able to knock off Buffalo and get a 2-game advantage in the AFC East on a really good football team. And, it's going to be a dogfight to see who's going to come out on top in the AFC East.
All right. Always great, John. We'll talk to you again next week, if not sooner. And we thank you so much for joining us. Great job, as always, on the Dolphin game and your analysis on college and pro football, the Pigskin Playbook. John Congemi, brought to you by Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, mile marker 104 in Key Largo. Thanks, John. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We'll talk next week.
John Congemi, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, we didn't even really get into that Marlins thing. Did you watch? I couldn't have been happier for that team when they clinched on Saturday night. It was really fantastic, and it was fun to watch. It's good to see all of these people that have been working with the broadcast. I mean, how boring is it when you're doing a lousy team? It's tough. I mean, year after year, that you're not in contention for anything. And there's no overwhelming reason to be optimistic. And maybe that was the case. I remember thinking, you talk about great expectations. There certainly wasn't any of that going into the season. Still ringing in my ears. I mean, we have great respect for Dave Hyde, one of the preeminent columnists anywhere in the country, and great sports columnist and sports writer here in South Florida. Been a pleasure reading his stuff for years and years and years, and having him on shows. But remember, that really is still resounding with me when we asked him if he thought those preseason changes were significant or cosmetic, and he said cosmetic, which I thought too. I mean, that's the reason I brought it up.
I agreed.
It's kind of like asking Belichick if the game has passed him by. Do we have the balls to do that, Lubie? Do you want to make a name for yourself in this business?
It's not going to do anything for me.
It's okay to be known as an asshole, though. It's a quicker route to the top to be the biggest jerk in the room than it is to be the person that goes ahead and imparts the greatest analysis and knowledge.
He's one answer. Like, he's not Saban, where like Saban will throw a barb back. Like, Belichick just mutters under his breath and moves on. Like, he doesn't.
You don't know what he's saying, yeah.
He doesn't give you anything. Like, to be the jerk, you can, but people always try to be the jerk with Belichick, and it just doesn't go anywhere. Like, he doesn't let you get any meat on the bone.
Don't they need to start putting subtitles up on the Belichick press conferences? When that guy asked him, I didn't. It was a little hard to decipher. But, the question, and yet it seemed like it was repeated because they showed this clip of Belichick just going, I just answered it. But you didn't know what he was saying. I mean, he could have been speaking in Hebrew at that point, because it was so muffled and so mumbled and done with no expression whatsoever. That has now become my highlight. I root for the Patriots to lose so we can get increasingly more bizarre
Belichick
and suspect-looking press conferences from Bill Belichick, where you really have to wonder what's going through this man's head. He's made plenty of money. I mean, what does he really have to, be unhappy about, Belichick?
Oh, I don't know. Well, they're a disaster, and it's more and more looking like Brady was the reason they won and not Belichick. Like whether you liked him or hated him, it's looking pretty clear. We'll look at what the Bucks are. Like,
Shula, has to be literally like laughing from the grave at this attempt of Belichick to win it and beat his record. How many wins is he away? Like, is he like 20 something? It might take him 3 more years of doing this at this dreadful level of play that the Patriots are exhibiting to surpass Don Shula. And then didn't you they always talk about it. Well, they kind of backed into that spot. I mean, wouldn't he have backed into it if he finishes his career with 3 6-win seasons? And that's what gets him to be the winningest coach of all time at the age of 79.
I don't know.
It's crazy, right?
I don't think he has 329 wins. Shula he's 18 away.
Yes.
He'd have to have, first of all, I don't see them winning 6 this year. So then that
could. It's not impossible. 6 wins is a pretty crummy year by NFL standards.
And I think they're worse than that. They may win 5. Okay.
You would think that they couldn't beat either of the 2 top teams in the AFC East. So, that would look like 4 surefire losses. No?
I think, let's say they win 5 games, so that's 13. I guess, look, if he coaches 3 more years, he'll get it. But they're going to be 3 dreadful years. I mean, they have nothing to work with. He's proven that he really has no idea what he's doing in the front office when he's by himself ever since Pioli left. And without Brady covering up his failures in the front office, they are just a bad team. So I guess the number's small enough where he could get there. But it's going to take it looked like it was going to be 10 wins a year. So he was almost there. It's going to take 3 or 4 years for him to get there.
Yeah, you would have thought 18 wins. He does this in 2 seasons, so he sticks around. As bad as the Patriots looked yesterday, and that doesn't mean that they can't. I hate this. This is my least favorite sports cliche now. Doesn't mean that they can't clean some things up. What the fuck are we talking about? Ray Donovan coming in and getting rid of the murder weapon and a lot of blood?
The fixer.
Clean some things up. Every coach uses that now, no?
All the time.
Yeah. You get blown out by 70 points. Well, we got to clean some things up.
You think?
Yeah, like the entire front office needs to go, Bill.
I was going to say, you better do a lot more than that.
Clean some things up. I don't want to make a real ugly reference about Bob Kraft and maybe, a smattering of spermatozoa on the wall there of that Asian spa. That's what you got to clean up, my friends. No, I don't know. I don't really root against Belichick. I still want to. The professor would. I'm sure if he was viewing this, he would absolutely. He would want to put a knife right through his computer.
Oh,
but how could you not respect that? I know everybody's like trying to make a big thing, and this is typical sports talk. Hypothetical, no way to really give an answer except that it was probably shared, the credit with Belichick and Tom Brady. As sure, who has great success with a shitty quarterback long term as a professional head coach?
Well, no one does.
Yeah. Has there ever been anybody that went 20 years at the top with lousy quarterback play?
No, because even I really can't think of anyone. I mean, I can't
because they wouldn't get 20 years to do it.
Yeah, They're not going to win without a great quarterback. I look at even guys who have won Super Bowls don't last long when they have bad quarterback play.
Yeah. Matt Getz would have made a great sportscaster, huh? Talk about an extremist. It would have been perfect. All right. Many things happening, including, and this is weird, Lubie. I didn't even realize this. Did you? Now, because of the expansion of the postseason in Major League Baseball, they no longer do the 1-game showdown with wildcard teams. Okay. So the series are 2 out of 3 to open up. The top 4 division winners of the 6 end up with a bye in the first round. Okay. So in the National League, that is the Braves and the Dodgers. They're out of the first round, and the other teams have to battle it out. The Marlins, this was still to be decided, and somebody, I guess it was, what was it, Mike Mayo that actually asked what was the more favorable matchup for the Marlins?
Yes.
I'm not sure that there's an overwhelming decision either way there. The Brewers seem to, I think, had a better record than the Phillies did against the Marlins. The Marlins did have some good games against the Phillies. It will bring up the magic question: more overrated, Bryce Harper or the Stone Crab, which we now believe. Sorry, Mayo, is the Stone Crab. No, because he came back after we had been posing this question for years, and I think we had a legitimate case that it was Bryce Harper, with the money he was making and the productivity and the number of strikeouts, low batting average, and then he goes out and has a monster MVP year last year.
Yep.
And powers the Phillies nearly to a world championship. Almost, I don't know that it was single-handedly, but he was the biggest factor in their success last year. I thought Bryce Harper by far. Not a bad season after coming back from this Tommy John stuff, right? Not bad. I mean, he didn't play the whole year. What was a significant factor? They have a leadoff hitter that's batting like 189 in Schwarber, but has almost, I think he hit like 48, 49 home runs as a leadoff hitter, Kyle Schwarber. So they have plenty of firepower. I don't know. I'm not sure that either matchup is particularly favorable for the Marlins, because the Marlins are that team that was, let's face it, somewhat marginal to get in there to begin with, and they managed to do it. Really, you talk about team chemistry or whatever. They really seem to possess a whole lot of that. And Schumacher and Stottlemyre Jr., how the hell were they doing this with no pitching staff to speak of, and yet you talk about managing your bullpen well. I mean, somehow they managed to work their way into the postseason. So I did not know this, though, Lubie, that there is no home game for the lower seed in the 2 out of 3 series. All 3 games are played in the higher seeds ballpark if it goes 3.
That's okay. That's a little weird. I mean, I guess it makes sense.
How else could you do it, though? I mean, you couldn't go, one.
It'd be 1-1-1. It'd be a lot.
You can't. Yeah, you can't do that. So they're going to play the 3 games if they go 3, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it's, again, we talk about the time of the year. I mean, how great is it when you have 4 postseason games going on the same day, 3 days in a row potentially? That's when baseball really it ratchets up the excitement factor quite a bit, especially, Lubie. I don't mean to recommend this because people do have gambling problems, and when it becomes a problem, then it's a problem. But if you have a few bucks on this thing, would you bet the Marlins to win this series against the Philadelphia Phillies? I would think no.
Phillies have played way better than the Marlins down the stretch. They have a better. The Marlins rotation's a fucking joke. Luzardo should be like their 4th pitcher. He's been their number 1, I guess. Garrett shouldn't even be a starting pitcher in their rotation. He's been their number 2.
He hasn't been bad.
He's been good, but again, like we saw right after the All-Star break, him being good is more of an aberration. Like, I don't know if you can count on him to be good.
I'm not sure. I thought he had a stretch there. I don't know. He finished up, I guess, okay also, but he had a little stretch there when after the Marlins turned around the All-Star break post debacle there. They lost 9 in a row, and it looked like that was it. And we threw in the towel among many times that we did it this season. But he pitched very well during that stretch when they came back and bounced their way back into the race. So he doesn't bother me. He seems to labor a little bit. There are always guys on base. It's Antonio Alfonseco revisited, where the guy comes in and, you may as well just automatically walk the first 3 guys. Just give him a free pass. Because, a guy's going to hit a dribbler for an infield hit. The next guy's going to rocket one in the right field. It's going to be 1st and 3rd. And then Alfonseco's going to hit somebody, bases loaded, nobody out. Every single fucking time.
Yes, 100%.
Garrett seems to get into those spots. I'll tell you what, you can't help but like the guys on this team. That's one thing.
They have a fun team. I like their team. The lineup has found a way. The rotation has overcome a lot.
Yeah.
It's just...
Bullpen too. I mean, we got to give a little Kimming, love here because, they were talking about trying to improve the bullpen, and they obviously did.
Yes.
And it wasn't like it was a gimme where they had one guy that just all of a sudden rose to the occasion, because guys had their various ups and downs all year, including Robertson now, who all of a sudden has become reliable, even though instead of being their, lights out closer, he's coming in like the 6th, 7th inning of ball games, but he's been effective of late. And then this guy Scott, man, he 100-mile-an-hour left-hander. I mean, he's got some gas and some stuff. So it's been very, very interesting year. So we applaud the Marlins. Wanted to salute them before we went to this break. We're going to bring on Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars. I mean, look, it's baseball, Lubie. Anything can happen, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the starter gets hot.
I would love to see him make it to the second round, wouldn't you? I mean, that would be a gas.
I'd love to see them make a run. I don't know with this team. They've been by the skin of their teeth the entire second half of the season, and the Phillies have sort of just pulled away. Like I feel like
Phillies were good, no doubt.
They primed for this when the Marlins have been playing. They talk about that. What team's playing playoff baseball? The Marlins. Like they've been playing for the playoff lives for fucking 2 months.
Yes, they've been on the ropes.
Them an edge. I just don't talent wise. It's leans Philadelphia so much. It's hard for me to fathom it.
Yeah. All right. We'll come back with more. Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars, scheduled to join us here, and we'll come back with more in a moment on a Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday on the Defo Show. Now that
The time.
it's 9:19. Ponies in Style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine foods served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in the Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Are you looking to buy your first home? Have you been turned down for a loan? Do you need to refinance or get money out of your home? Call Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. He's been helping the South Florida community get mortgages for 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. We have the most competitive fixed rates in the market. Call me 24/7, 561-441-2730. And remember, I don't just work banking hours. To make the right choice for your home, call Choice Mortgage today.
The simple pleasures of this job, the way a stadium sounds when one of my players performs well on the field, the way we are meant to protect them in health and in injury. Less, more attention, caring for them, caring for ourselves in the games too.
The agent to the stars, the one and only Brett Tessler.
Welcome back to the show. Going to wrap things up here with the agent of the Stars, Brett Tessler, joining us here. Touch back on some things in the National Football League. I did get a text from the Polyman during that ad for Michael Kodsey, who, by the way, does a tremendous job. I mean, this guy really is everything that he says and more. You can go, to banks all day long, and they're always asking you for one more document, your mother's birth certificate, whatever, and, stuff that you can never find. And he said he would never want to arm wrestle Michael Kodsey, the Polyman. Guy looks fit. All right, here's a guy who's as swift and fit as, no pun intended, with the new furor around and fever around the National Football League with Taylor Swift, but every bit as much of a superstar. Brett Tessler, the agent of the Stars, joins us here on the show. Brett, how are you, my friend?
Doing great, Steve. Great to be with you.
Good to be with you. All right, many things to touch on here in a short period of time. Your impressions, and what do we take away from yesterday's game, if anything, except that the Dolphins are 3-1. They still look like they have a very dynamic offense. It kind of sputtered in spots yesterday with the turnovers, but at the same time, defense got shredded by the Buffalo Bills. But at 3-1, they're right there atop the division. With the Bills holding the edge of head-to-head play so far. But what did you make of yesterday's game? What should we take away from it?
Well, what I take away from it is we look like we are a very good team who got beat by a possibly great team. And like we talked about last week, this was going to be a big test, and they failed. And that's okay. It's not the last one of the season. It's still early in the year. A lot of things change between now and the postseason. Some of the teams that look like they're absolutely untouchable might end up hitting some rough patches, may have an injury. a season-changing type of injury or something like that. And then there's other teams that you're going to see starting to play better football and starting to emerge. And so right now, I don't think everybody could expect the Dolphins to beat everybody 70-20 every game. But I think it made it very clear some of the areas that have been an issue over time and against a real dominant defense look like they could still be an issue, like offensive line as a whole. Obviously, their center was out of the game, so that kind of changes things up considerably. And then, Tua just had a off game. And when Tua's got that timing and that accuracy going, nobody does what he does better. He is the absolute perfect guy for this offense, as we've discussed. And more often than not, the guy's been really good. Yesterday was one of those games where it wasn't so good. And so that can happen. You saw him starting to get knocked around a little bit. These are the things that if this team has any serious aspirations of going to the postseason and competing for a championship, these are the things that they're going to have to clean up. They're going to have to give him better protection. And, just as a whole, the defense, it looked like there was a lot of missed tackles. I'd say it's about as bad as you're going to see this Dolphins team play. And that's a good thing because it wasn't like they ended up losing to an inferior opponent. They lost to probably one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the NFL. So it's okay. Nothing to panic over. It's just one of those things where you learn from it. And maybe, again, it's not the absolute worst thing that can happen after that Denver game when maybe everyone on the team starts assuming that this is just going to be a cakewalk the rest of the way and everyone's going to bow down to us.
Well, look, and the offensive line was clearly playing above its head when all offseason, a lot of people like me were worried about the offensive line, and then they looked like this dominant offensive line through 3 games. Depth is still an issue, and they are filled with injury-prone guys. Armstead, out again. Connor Williams came in as an injury-prone guy, out again. And then Austin Jackson, who hasn't gotten hurt, is still usually an injury-prone guy. So depth is an issue for that line. You saw that Connor Williams went out, and I knew it was going to be a long day, and it was. To me, the weird issue is you brought up the defense. I get it. Fangio is bringing in, I don't know if it's an entirely new defense, but it sort of feels like it when you watch the defensive line go from being dominant last year to being nowhere to be found. I mean, they're running right up the middle against Wilkins and Sealer, 2 of the better defensive tackles in the league. And then the secondary just looks lost. Like, Cole was this great story. They were picking on him yesterday. Like, it was a freaking disaster. Like, you've been around the league. You've been around the players. They keep saying it's going to take time for them to learn the defense. I mean, we're in the season. How much time? Because it feels like they're getting worse. Like, they looked lost yesterday. Like, it was sad. From the second and third quarter, it was like, okay, what is, like, missed coverages, guys just running free, no pressure. Josh Allen just standing back there forever. Like you've been around Fangio, you know his defense. Is this just growing pains? Like, is this how it looks in the beginning of learning a defense like his?
Josh Allen's probably, Lubie, one of the absolute most difficult covers in the NFL. I mean, that guy is just so unorthodox. You look at him in the pocket, he's just so like quirky and herky-jerky, and he can throw the ball at any time from any angle, anywhere. He's got tremendous size strength, tremendous speed and athleticism. I mean, yeah, it's really a very, very difficult type of a quarterback to contain because you basically pick your poison. If you want to try to keep him in the pocket, he can kill you with the arm. If you want to come at him, he can just step right up, roll out, or just take the ball 25 yards upfield himself. I mean, this is a very, very good Bills team. Don't get too down in the mouth just yet because, again, the Dolphins didn't have Jalen Ramsey, and I mean that's one of the key players on their entire defense. And that's a guy that really changes the complexion of an entire secondary. Yeah. So when you have that guy and Xavier Howard on the field, now it's a whole different ball game than some of these other fill-in pieces, you know, that you're trying to make work if you're Fangio or the other coaches on that team. So, you know, that's a transcendent player and a Jalen Ramsey. So that's, I have to believe, I can't say if they had Jalen Ramsey that for sure they win the game, But I think things would have been a little different. And as far as the offensive line, I mean, look, even with all these pieces healthy, it's just far from a perfect offensive line. I mean, I can just tell you, representing linemen all over this league and having represented more linemen than any other position, it's one of those things where just, I don't know why, but perennially, it seems like that always is sort of an issue or a big question mark with this team. Whereas now, again, with the healthy Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard, nobody would question the corners. When you look at the receiving core, I mean, it may be the best in the entire NFL. When you look at the running back core there, it's as good as any in the NFL. Just for whatever reason, even at its best, you know, this offensive line coming into every game, it's always like, well, let's see how this is going to go. And then when you go against the dominant defense and you got guys like Matt Milano out there, and just that defense is just loaded and just so well schemed. And I mean, Sean McDermott, it's just a great defensive team. And so, you know, when you sort of factor all these things in, and then you start, you know, talking about injuries and this guy leaving the game and this guy stepping in at center instead of this guy, it's just really going to start turning out like pretty much yesterday did. So let's just hope it's one of those things where as the season goes on, they only get healthier, they have better luck with that stuff. And if that's the case, again, there's a long way to go, and I think they'll be fine.
Liam Eichenberg, not exactly reminding you of Dwight Stevenson in that game, or even Tim Runny, our good friend. You know, it was sloppy at best, and you know, a real rough go. So hopefully they can shake that off. Brett Tessler come back against what has been a very sad-looking Giants team. They play tonight against Seattle. And so they'll be coming in off a short week, regardless of how they play, and certainly haven't looked like much so far this season, even though they managed to carve out that win over Arizona a couple of weeks back when Zona, I think, had them by the jugular. And other than that, it's been a real disaster. So we'll see how they do. But by the way, do you have any tickets for that game that you want to unload, Brett Tessler? Because That is the most popular ticket I've ever seen. I mean, if Taylor Swift was giving away tickets yesterday to her next concert at the Jet game, she wouldn't have drawn as much of a crowd as somebody posting they want like a dime a piece for nosebleed tickets to this Giants game. A very popular commodity down here.
Yeah, no, it's exciting for sure. It's just nice to see a buzz around this team, and again, nobody should overreact to what happened yesterday. If this happened against a lesser team, or, you know, if we had all of our best players playing healthy, then that's something you could maybe be a little more concerned about. But I mean, the buzz should continue. This, you know, hopefully when people look back on this season, hopefully this last game is just seen as a valuable bump in the road and maybe a little bit of a wake-up call. And so again, I mean, people should definitely stay excited here.
So you're not ready to sign up and join the bandwagon of the Fire Vic Fangio movement that Lubie and I have begun?
I'm not trying to fire him. I'm just
Lubie used to be like that, man. He was ready to can everybody after one game, but we'll see what happens. All right, some observations from around the rest of the league. The elite, San Francisco looks great. I think Brock Purdy completed 92% of his passes. I didn't see the game. I saw some highlights, and you know, he's been razor sharp coming back from Tommy John surgery. I think he even threw a couple of fork balls yesterday. I mean, that were for completions. So they look good. Philadelphia hasn't really separated themselves. I mean, they're winning their games, but they haven't been brilliant so far this year. And Kansas City, after getting off to that lightning quick start against the Jets, staggered their way home to a 3-point victory. So who do you see? I mean, is San Francisco establishing itself as the cream of the crop so far, or what do you see at the top?
I think so. I mean, that team is just so embarrassingly loaded with talent to where, as good as Brock Purdy is, and let's just say I don't think Brock Purdy is necessarily Aaron Rodgers or John Unitas or Dan Marino, but he doesn't have to be. He is exactly what that team needs, which is a guy who runs that offense perfectly and a guy who doesn't make mistakes. And so that team will win with their defense. That team will win by running the ball and controlling the offense, and Brock Purdy does what he needs to do. So realistically, Brock Purdy may be one of the weaker links on the team, and that's saying a lot because he's pretty damn good. And so that team is scary. Obviously, as you mentioned, Buffalo, as we talked about, I'd say, Kansas City is always going to be a good team, even though they looked a little more human last night. And, one team I think that people need to be mindful of is the Dallas Cowboys, a very, very dangerous team. And then, of course, yes, Philadelphia. So, it's pretty clear to see who the top 4 or 5 teams are in the league. And the Dolphins are probably at the moment, maybe just on the fringe of that, just maybe on the top of the next tier. So things change. Some of those teams in the top tier, not sure who it'll be, not sure if it could be a Dallas or a Philadelphia or for whatever reason. I mean, look, last year, remember early in the season, Philadelphia couldn't lose. They looked like an absolute juggernaut. They looked like a sure bet for a Super Bowl championship, and it didn't happen. And so there's other teams that just emerge at the right time. It's going to be all about just being good enough to where you're going to make the postseason. And I think that Dolphins fans could feel pretty confident in that. And once you get there, it's just about who's playing the best football at that time of the year. And so health has something to do with it, just chemistry and just synergy and all that stuff. So it's a long season, and we're just about, less than a quarter of the way through now.
Brock Purdy, that story reminds me of the Gino Toretta Heisman, where he's probably the 8th best player on the team, but because he was the quarterback, and actually the spotlight was on him, and he ends up winning the Heisman Trophy that year, which essentially was saying, hey, this was one great team. We had to give it to somebody that was on that squad. All right, Lubie and I have put ourselves up to a proposition. I don't know that we have the balls to do this, but depending on, and I guess, it's not the last game of the season is against Buffalo, but whenever the Patriots come to town, would you advise us as an agent, if you were our agent, to go ahead and go to the press conference after the game, anticipating that the Patriots will lose on the road to the Dolphins, and ask Bill Belichick the first question? We shove Bo Camper to the floor so he doesn't get the chance to do it. And we say, Bill, has the game passed you by? If you were going to represent us to, these various outlets, whether it was Barstool Sports, FanDuel, whatever, would you recommend we do that to make a name for ourselves? And what do you think the response would be?
Bill's a good guy. And one of the real thrills of my time in this business has been dealing with him, and the fact that my first ever drafted player was drafted by him, and getting a chance to talk to him a little bit, and throughout the years, sort of interacting with him here and there a little bit. The Bill Belichick that his players know, and the Bill Belichick that people in the organization and people in the business like myself get a chance to see, it's not the guy that you think he is. It's not that grumpy, mumbling guy at the press conference. I have the most respect for that guy. I believe he's the greatest coach of all time. And I think a guy like him can adapt to any generation. In this league, you have to have talent. And it's obvious that Mac Jones, while he's not the worst quarterback in the league at all, and in fact, I think he does some things well, he doesn't have that Tom Brady quality where he himself can just take an organization on his shoulders and, persevere. So I think that that roster as a whole over time has really grown depleted. The salary cap catches up to everybody, and it usually really hits you the hardest 2-3 years down the road. And so, they're kind of trying to get out of that. And I feel like, that guy can coach defense with the best of them in any generation. That guy could have coached 100 years ago, and that guy would figure out how to coach 100 years from now. It's just one of those things where it's some people may take pleasure out of seeing him struggle, and seeing a team like Dallas, again, a very, very dangerous, talent-filled team. They really took him to the woodshed yesterday. And, it's one of those deals where New England, no matter, who they have or whatever, as long as they have Belichick as coach, they're going to be competitive. They will be dangerous. And so I don't think that's a team that the Dolphins should be overlooking for an easy win. And, it's not going to get easier as the season goes on. You mentioned Buffalo at the end there, and some of the other games. It's the NFL, man. You can't overlook anybody on any given week.
I love the Belichick post-game press conferences. I mean, reminds me of, a guy was an evil character in this case, but the Manson parole hearings, very similar. And you're watching, in that case, the ramblings of a raving lunatic, and you were just hoping one of those California parole board people wouldn't fall asleep and go, okay, yeah, sound free. Brett, we love you, man. I hope you have a good week, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Sounds great, guys. Talk to you then.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, was that a no to either the idea of representing us?
So he definitely doesn't want to represent us, and he definitely doesn't think.
You notice how he just dodged that whole.
Totally ignored it.
Represent you for what? For the many enterprises that we're involved in. Come on, right? It's all going to come together. We know this. We have our fingers crossed. We have a lot of faith.
We have a lot going on. Something's got to hit.
It'll be working our ass off. All right. We have to get out of here a little early today. A couple of things going on here, including me having to take the Mustang to the airport, which sure is of no great concern to the sports fans out there that want more entertainment. But we will provide it for you later on. We have a no filter thing coming up, and also Mike Mayo's lunchbox later on today. Mayo, did he hit for like 4 dimes or something?
Yes. Yeah, he had a nice score.
Ooh,
had a long drought.
And then I think he went out and celebrated with a very, very fancy and high caloric meal.
Yes,
which he sent pictures of. So we were concerned whether he was taking into account the sugar content in some of that stuff. I'm sure he'll have stories to tell. So that's 12 o'clock today. South Florida Live and Let's Eat South Florida on the Facebook group. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow as we leave you know that.
The time.
It's 9:40.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my soul.